I'm Leslie Hibbs. I teach Advanced Placement, Language and Composition, which is a junior level class at our school. During our professional learning communities, we were asked to create a common lesson plan among the junior English teachers. After we got together, one of the teachers got very excited about a lesson in which children would be asked to look at something that they've read in the past and find song lyrics that would illustrate the character. So they would choose a piece of literature that they read in the past, choose textual evidence that define facets of that character, and then they would find lyrics from popular songs that would illustrate that facet of that character. And they would be asked to find 3 different facets of the character. Since I teach Advanced Placement, Language and Composition, I wanted to make it more rigorous by asking the children that I teach to look through all of the books that we have read this year. Some are fiction, some are nonfiction. Some of the characters are round characters and they make a lot of growth during the course of the book. And some of the characters are flat characters. They don't grow. So I've asked the students to select among the books that we've read. I've asked them to talk to each other in groups based on the books chosen. So I wanted them in groups in which nobody had a similar book. I wanted them in groups where the Of Mice and Men student was talking to the In Cold Blood student who was talking to the Scarlet Letter student, because I want them to be thinking about all of the books that we read, all of the pieces of literature and nonfiction that we read over the course of the year. I want them to help each other. My concern is that if all of the Scarlet Letter people spoke to each other, it would end up with one really good project, and I wanted them to all have really good projects. So they will be asked to come back, show explicitly the textual evidence from the book, and then they will be asked to cite specific lines from the lyrics they found that embody the characteristics that they're illustrating. Let me tell you why I put a Bible quotation on the do now. I put this on here because I'm trying to find those biblical quotes that are going to show up with most frequency in literature, because you, of course, are going to some of you, most of you, I hope, are going to go to AP Lit. And one of the problems is when they get to AP Lit, they don't have any biblical background, so they have a lot of trouble. The AP Lit students have a lot of trouble linking that this is a reference to the Bible. So I chose this one because your president, in 2009, when he gave his inaugural address, actually references this in his speech. And I thought, well, that would be nice of us to recognize. Can I ask if anybody wants to explain what this means, just so we're all
just growing up, maturing.
Growing up and maturing, put away childish things.
Yep.
Not hard to understand. I just wanted, if it shows up in a piece of literature in somebody's speech, like President Obama's, I wanted you to be able to say, that comes from the Bible.
Yes.
Now, yours is going to be a much more difficult chore, because you're going to be using a book. I'm using a short story because I didn't want to take one of your books and use it. I wanted to leave all the choices of the books available for you. So you're going to choose among all of the ones we read, the Scarlet Letter, Everybody needs to calm down. We can't all do that. Huckleberry Finn, mice and men, in cold blood, the things they carry. And then in the literature book itself, which I left back there, is, of course, the crucible. So we have a myriad choices. And you're thinking about only one character in this story. So if you're going to select the Scarlet Letter, you can go with Hester Prynne, or you can go with Dimsdale, or you can go with Chillingsworth. You're not.
Oh, we don't pick that book at all. No, we don't pick that book at all.
We're just not. Chillingsworth is. So you can choose among the characters in the book. Understand that you're tasked with showing growth, or at least movement, through the book. So you could certainly select Linny, but Linny's, of Mice and Men, his character development is very thin. He doesn't change very much. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can choose him. I think that he would be a decidedly difficult person to try to show growth.
In comparison to George.
In comparison to George, who shows some growth. My person, of course, is Seymour Glass. Remember Seymour? He's our main character. So I've marked it 2 ways. You're going to mark your text 3 ways. I did it 2 ways because, well, I'm alive because I made the rules, and also because I'm doing a short story, and I only really have 2 parts of Seymour that I wanted to showcase. Each time you see yellow, that's one facet of Seymour that I'm illustrating. Anytime you see underlining, that's another facet of Seymour that I'm illustrating. Give me I get it. I'm with you. I know what you're talking.
Keep going.
I have no clue which. I hear your voice and nothing is going to. Okay. So let's look through and let's see what I've highlighted. I highlighted the parts where Muriel is talking to her mother. We have not met Seymour Glass. We haven't even heard his name yet. And Muriel has been characterized as being a really vapid, vacuous woman. She barely gets up to ring the phone. She's wearing her mules. I don't know if you remember Muriel. She's just horrible. And she's talking to her mother. And these are the hints that J.D. Salinger are giving to us to say there's something awry with Seymour. Because Mom is saying, oh my gosh, you let him drive? And Seymour's wife, Muriel, is saying, well, he drove very nicely. I was amazed. He drove under 50 the whole way. Did he try any of that funny business with the trees? We're not being given very many hints, but since we've read the story and we know what happens to Seymour Glass and how he feels about the world around him, we can take this information now and say, this is our first hint that he's not tightly wrapped. Driving, funny business with the trees, we can make some extrapolation that he drove a car into a tree. And we know that after. So I wrote up here, after I highlighted, I made an annotation on the text itself to say, we get some hints that perhaps the person they're talking about has entertained suicidal thoughts, perhaps has driven his car into a tree. And then I moved to the next part. Again, I haven't met Seymour, I'm just looking at Seymour through the lens of Muriel and her mother's conversations. Seymour said all those horrible things to Granny about her plans for passing away. So he seems to be overly obsessed with death. And then they talk about, well, he just got out of the Army. Further indication that this man has gone through some real tribulation in his life, and he's feeling the emotional effects. Now we know he got out of the Army. There's a very good chance, he said, that Seymour may completely lose control of himself. So we have some foreshadowing again that something's awry. He obviously has been treated. It doesn't sound to me, as I'm reading the text and citing this textual evidence, that the treatment has been very successful. He has been doing aberrant things, like talking to an old lady right before her passing away. So I marked parts in the text that led me to believe that Seymour Glass has some serious emotional issues. And then I said, because the rubric tells me that I have to find popular, or it says I have to find lyrics that I could link that would reflect what I just saw in the text. So I'm telling you that that textual evidence says that this is a man who has seen some stuff that people shouldn't see. He's getting no help at home, and he has suicidal ideology. That's what I'm telling you. Now I had to find music. Well, being a woman who likes, the Carpenters and Jimmy Buffett, I actually had to search for stuff because I don't have a lot of, suicidal war kind of music in my arsenal of things I like to listen to. So I had to go out there and look for stuff. But this is what I found.
Oh, I love that song.
Yeah, because I'm into Metallica. These are not my people. I'm
It's a
sorry.
great song.
But I found the song, and the weird thing was, I don't know if you remember, but we had a song that I really
Hero
liked.
of
Remember
War.
Robert, Hero of War?
Rising
And I was looking at that, and I had a big discussion with the teachers I was working with, because I said, it would be really cool to think back to a song that you and I have already listened to together. But when you read the lyrics of Hero of War, unless you see the visual that goes with it and watch the guy go crazy, the lyrics do not support. They support, I'm a hero of war, I'm fighting for my country. Unless you see the visual, which completely belies the text on the page, I couldn't use it. Because
Well, the third part was the third verse of it.
Where it says-
where he's talking about the girl, and, like,
how she told her to stop, but
I know, as I'm reading, and I read it through, and I saw that and I thought, I wasn't sure that the text made it clear that that was the turning point for him emotionally, because it comes back to the refrain, and he never. I just felt like the visual was too important. That's why I chose it. Maybe you could make a case for it. That's how I read it. So again, in yellow, I highlighted the lyrics. And I'll tell you, I only found lyrics at the very beginning of the song. So I only am citing that textual evidence. I'm not doing the whole song. Because frankly, this whole song was written to go along with a movie called Johnny Got His Gun. So it gets more into that theme later.
Sounds like an 8-minute
But
song,
for this
too.
very first part, I thought it was really good. So I'm just going to play just a
War,
titch.
and some guy got all his limbs for
That's the story. Johnny got his gun, and he's living in his head. But I liked it because I felt like Seymour is living in his head. Like he's seeing everything around him disgusting, except Sybil. So that's why I chose it. I thought it was well. So this is what I highlighted, and these were the comments I made. I thought that stanza echoed Seymour's desire to scream. And I thought that I could make a case that his screaming is not a vocal screaming. His screaming is driving cars into trees. His screaming is talking to a woman inappropriately about her imminent passing. His screaming is the idea that people are talking about him and saying, oh my gosh, he's going to go off the deep end any minute, but nobody's helping him. And there's no real depth in his life. So that's my comment on that textual evidence. Select a book. Select a character from the book. Choose textual evidence that shows the growth or the movement of the character through this, whichever piece of literature or nonfiction you choose.
Why don't you use the author because he's the book?
Actually, I want to do Harry.
Yeah, I should do that.
Harry's all about that suffering stuff. There's a lot of.
He's all about that.
He is all about
He's
that.
all about
He has
that,
a
right?
horrible childhood.
Okay.
So, which character did you pick?
I decided with Scarlet Letter, I decided to choose Pearl because, she's a little harder to talk about because she's younger and she's not really much through the book. But she has, a lot of character to her.
Yeah, that's right.
So I figured she would be a nice one to talk about. What about you?
I was going to do Hester because the way she changes through the book, she starts kind of scandalous, and then kind of the A that she gets later on in the story becomes something of respect, and people start to respect her.
Yeah, so you're going to be able to
Yeah.
talk about
Friends
how
and
she
so on.
was probably depressed through it then.
Yeah.
And then with Pearl, I'm probably going to be able to talk how through the end she becomes more human instead of that child that yeah. She's not forgotten anymore.
She's not a curse upon the earth.